All right. Well, welcome to Gafferpedia, audiovisual rental industry podcast where we tackle the big topics. And today we're talking about freelancing. So we've got Kieran here joining us along the journey. And let's get into it.
Let's go. Kieran, you've recently got into the freelancing game after coming out of full-time.
Yes.
What's it been like?
Yeah, it's been good. I've kind of freelanced off and on over the years. I'm kind of one of the weird people that started out in the industry freelancing first. There's some people that I knew, whereas most people kind of get a job first and learn how to do stuff. I just said yes.
Yeah, just to paint a picture for our dear listener, just briefly, because I know you're going to be a regular on the show, because we're predicting, because you're a friend of the podcast, even though we just begun. So we can get into Kieran's story a lot deeper on other episodes, but just briefly, tell us quickly the Kieran story, how you got to this point.
Well, I was born. No. So I started out originally, my first ever taste of AV would have been primary school. I just set up the PA for the assembly. Then I moved on, later on in life, through my family's church. I started doing sound, and I think I started out doing lighting and video first. And we had a lot of people at our church who did it professionally, which was really cool. So people like Aaron, Rebecca and Singe Gill and others. They were doing it full time, and they were bringing the training that they were delivering at work and giving it to us as teenagers, which was really cool. So we got to learn a lot just from that sort of volunteer early age type space. And then later on after high school, I did an audio course, mainly focused on studio environment. Then straight from that, I went into freelancing. So Aaron got me a gig doing this national roadshow for a corporate event. Did that, got to know some people. Yeah,
that's an awesome in, and just goes to show how important networking is, and it is a lot of who you know. You had those contacts and able to really not only learn a lot, but really get that foothold into the business straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
Really cool.
Yeah, so that was nearly 14 years ago now. I've been doing it professionally, and then probably about 5 years before that, doing it on an amateur level.
And how did that network, I suppose, grow? Freelancers don't traditionally advertise. There's no kind of marketplace.
That's right.
It's just word of mouth.
Yeah.
Traditionally.
Exactly.
Probably really.
Try to do the opposite of advertise now, try to hide.
That's it. We'll get into that, I think, as well, just managing time and
Yeah. But it's just like anything, it all kind of happens organically as you... So I had that great foot in the door with those friends back then, Aaron and Singe and a few others, who got me that initial gig. And then once you do those gigs, you meet people, and then they're working for whatever company, and they're like, "Hey, that company's looking for people. I can throw your name across." Yep. Yeah, great, do it. And then it just kind of spreads from there.
I think from my experience with it, for me it was a little bit of both. Definitely before I went freelance, I was full time for a fair amount of time, and then went freelance, called a whole bunch of people I knew and tapped into that existing network. But also I had the foresight to start freelancing in July, which is kind of usually quite a bit of a quiet period. So just had to back that up with getting on the phones and just looking through and just calling a whole bunch of different companies, find out where they're at, just go meet with a whole bunch of people and start new contacts and all that kind of thing, because you've just got to get yourself out there, and it can be really uncomfortable, I think, to do. Right. But you just, especially in the beginning, you kind of have to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So full-time employment.
Yep.
Rather than, as well as I'll include casual, but it's actually working for someone on the books versus freelancing.
Yep.
Why choose one over the other? Why did you go straight into? You must have had offers to go full-time.
I did way back then. The company I did the roadshow with, they offered me a job. I originally chose freelancing back then because of some other life. Didn't really need a full-time job, basically.
Right.
I was living at home with my parents. Kind of thought freelancing would be a good way to get into the industry and experience a lot of different parts. And there was no financial pressure at home to need a full-time job. And then like the most recent time I went back to freelancing, which was after I was full time with you, that was more of I called a bunch of people, made sure everyone knew I was freelance because I had a small family and a house, and I was like, I need to be working a lot. But at that point in my career, I knew I could fill my calendar on a freelancing basis.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a bit of pressure can do.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember I was in a very similar boat. It was like, all right, I'm freelance now, got a family, got rent to pay. This needs to happen. It's amazing what you can make happen when you're in that situation.
That's right.
Because, so just to paint a picture for the dear listener, when I had my previous business, Kieran worked for me full time, and you came on board, I guess, in that point in your life, which is a fairly classic story. Young family, or maybe not even at that point. No, so just married, wanting to buy a house.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a cliche, but it tends to be the way that it often tends to work. And then once that kind of financial commitment's done, I guess, or in play, you can then obviously go back out. But that must be it must be hard it's always been hard for businesses to find staff. Some companies are very pro full-time, and some companies obviously just work on casual, and freelancers. But just also, I guess, state the obvious, no business can survive with their full-time staff. They have to bring in freelancers, don't they? I mean, it's just if you never have to bring anyone in, you've probably got too many people.
Yeah.
With the ups and downs of business,
true.
right? So there's always a market for some.
Yeah.
COVID changed that a bit, didn't it? There seemed to be like not enough full-timers and heaps of people on the freelance market.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people left and went to different industries. From what I hear, there was a bit of a experience disappearing from the industry throughout that time because out of necessity, really, no one knew what was going on, and if there's no events going on, who knows when they're going to come back? Because people have sort of gone down different paths, and
that's right.
Then when the events kick up again, it's like, well, where is everybody? What are we going to do? But a lot of people experienced working from home, a bit more flexibility, not going in the office all the time. And I reckon there's a lot of people that thought, hey, I don't want to go back into the office or I don't want to go full time with the one person. I kind of like that flexibility, and they got a taste of it. And that's not just in AV; that's kind of across a whole bunch of different industries.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's back in with the freelance versus full time. That's the big reasons for me being freelance at the moment is flexibility over my hours and my time, in the sense that I'm in full control in terms of saying yes and no.
Yep. And diversity of work.
And diversity is a really big one. Yeah. So I kind of do maybe 50% corporate events these days still, to 25% in sort of TV broadcast type world, and the other 25% is just smattering of other bits of music, sports broadcast, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a very good point, because often a business will have a specialty.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you're in that business, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
But freelance, you get a taste of everything, really. Don't you?
Yeah, that's right. That's why I really love it. And I really like. So at the moment, sort of till the end of May, we're probably about 75% booked up. But in that, I kind of know the hours of a lot of those jobs, and we can kind of plan life around it compared to being full time. I know every company's different, but next week I know my hours. Whereas when you're full time somewhere, a job can pop up next Wednesday night. And I'm like, hey, we really need you to go do that. And it's like, well, I've got these. And companies will make way. And you guys were very good at making way when I was here, at Show Division back then. But it's much easier as a freelancer to have all that nailed in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess it can also go the other way, though, as well, especially when you're new. A lot of people will say, all right, I've got to take everything. Someone's calling me, I've got to make sure I say yes, because they might not call me next time. And so you say yes.
Yeah.
And that was something that I sort of struggled with early on when I was freelancing a lot, was just scheduling in some days off. It sounds like a weird thing, because when you first start, you're like, oh, gee, I'd love to be so busy. But if you get out there and really push, you will get to a point where in the busy seasons, everyone's calling you. And I used to get into a situation where I'd have my calendar there, and you're trying to respond to people in between shifts, and you haven't slept much, and you're trying to get things done. You say, yeah, I'm free that day. Yeah, I'm free that day. Yeah, no, nothing on. Yeah, cool. And then you get a moment to sit down and have a look at your calendar, and you're like, oh, wow, I don't have a day off until oh, this is like 14 days straight. And then I said yes because I was free that day, but the bump out's going to start at 10:30. I'll get out at midnight. I've got to be here at 6 a.m.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
If my boss did this to me, I'd quit.
Yeah.
But it's me.
Do you use software to manage that, or just physically your diary?
Yeah, I just have my calendar on my phone.
Yeah.
Which is where I've done that many times, boned myself being like, yep, I can do that shift. Yep, I can do that shift to 2 different companies. And then I realise, that one starts at 5 and that one finishes at 1 a.m.
Yeah, and what do? You've locked yourself in.
Yeah.
I think having a system's very good.
Is there like Calendarly and all those?
I personally use Google Calendar, but I've got a methodical way of using it. So I'll have a certain calendar with a colour associated to it that is for gigs that are booked in.
Yep.
And sort of they're all in red and they're in the events calendar and I can always see where they sit. And then when it comes to invoicing, I'll often have a look back, look at those events, send an invoice and then change that to an invoicing calendar so I can keep track of what events I've got coming up and then have I invoiced for that event. Because that's another thing. You can, if you don't have a system and you're working flat out and then you go back and go, oh, I've got to invoice everybody. When did it, have I invoiced them? And it can waste a lot of time and you can miss things. So it's really important.
Yeah. Well, I have no idea. I've never thought of it, but whether there's scheduling software for
potentially there is. Yeah,
It might be.
You can block out buffers. And all that sort of gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, like scheduling in days off. I think that's going back to what I was saying before. I think that's really important because if you've got enough work over a month, those days off, you really want to put in your calendar day off.
Yeah.
So you can have a look because you need that downtime.
As you say, you wouldn't necessarily accept that from your employer.
Yeah, exactly. So why accept it from yourself?
Bizarre.
Yeah, and I always do those. If I know if I'm going to be working away, I always try and schedule days off around that away work for the family. Which is why, most of us freelancers charge more to go away. There's days either side that I don't work, just to be home with the kids. And
And also that time that you're not working interstate, like you're stuck in a hotel room, like you're not, it's not like you're got the world is not your oyster. So that needs to be taken into account, I guess.
Exactly.
And you're saying that, 50%, 30%, whatever it is TV production kind of stuff you do now.
Yeah.
How do you go flipping between the two? Surely they're quite different.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
In everything, in every regard, I suspect.
Yeah. I don't necessarily... It's something that just kind of comes fairly natural to flip between. It's much easier to flip into, like when you're going to do TV work or rock and roll, so music gigs or any of that sort of stuff. That's much easier to go to from a corporate perspective, I find, because there's less, push from the client and that kind of thing. You can just kind of go and do your job and everyone there is kind of there. You're not necessarily client-facing as much.
Yeah, and they tend to be bigger teams.
And they're bigger teams, so you're a little bit further down the chain. You're just kind of there to do your tech job, and you do your tech thing. You have a bunch of tech people around you, and we're just doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas AV. Flipping back into AV, you have to get a lot more. You have to go, right.
Wearing more hats.
You wear more hats. You've got to client face and be very happy to do all the little changes. And
And I guess the client can change their mind on a whim when you're at an event.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess if you're on a TV show, like they know how it's going to go.
And I find as well, flipping between different companies, some companies I work for are purely video. And then, you go work for AV companies and they do everything. And I find that hat can sometimes be a hard one to juggle because I'll go to do an AV or especially I'll go to do a video gig. Say if I'm working for TDC or someone and there's like an audio problem happening around me. It's like I could fix that, but it's not my department. It's not my gear.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of that weird balance of like, I want to be helpful, but I also don't want to step on other people's toes.
Right.
Or also...
It's not your responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing as well. Sometimes when you do want to help and you think, I can come here and help a different aspect of a show, if then something goes wrong with that aspect and it impacts the show, you can have dragged yourself into that. And all of a sudden it was your fault.
Yes.
When you're not getting
meddling,
paid or, to bear that responsibility, sometimes it is best to just worry about your own, without trying to be selfish about it or anything, but sometimes it is better to just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
The other chestnut that always comes up is, some businesses are better than others at and it must be hard as a freelancer walking into sometimes these things that can be a bit messy and a bit disorganised.
Totally. Yeah.
You kind of wish maybe you had more of a say a couple of days ago before
Yeah.
you got it there.
Yeah.
But you don't, and you didn't.
Yeah.
You can't turn back time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's different levels of grace I give companies with that as well. You know, sometimes you walk into a gig and you can tell that like the client changed a million things on them 12 hours ago, and we're all just trying to figure it out together.
Yeah.
Sometimes you walk in and it's like, man, like you guys didn't plan anything.
Yeah.
Like
Didn't ask
you walk in like you'll unload like a truck of gear and be like, floor plan, schematic, anything.
And sometimes being experienced can work against you in that sense, because sometimes companies get busy and they know that you're experienced and you know how to get things done. They'll go, we're really busy. Oh, he's on it. He'll sort it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not the best way to
No,
go about working with experienced people in a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then
And look, but you've, as long as I've known you, been very calm, cool, collected, unflappable, and just generally a really nice guy. So, I mean, do you think you get taken advantage of because of that?
I probably do. I'm not really aware of it though.
Right.
People probably are doing that in the background, like, oh, Kieran's on it, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But not. There might be elements of that, but not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
And so then how did you get to TV though? Because I mean, I've been in AV for 35 years, but I mean, I couldn't quit tomorrow and become a TV freelancer. I mean, I don't know anyone.
Yeah. I still don't really know a lot of people in TV, but the companies that I work for, like TDC, who do a lot of video, they do a lot of
You're right.
LED or gaming systems or something,
Yeah.
or those kind of things for TV, or
Yep.
people like Alex down the road. He does a lot of things that support larger broadcasts.
Yep.
And then through some contacts of his, I've gotten into a few other roles around that TV world.
And it is just relationships.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
always
It's all
just word of mouth.
people you know, and
It's huge, isn't it? Like you said, there's not a lot of advertising in freelance work. It's really just, and if you don't have a big network, you have to go out and get one, or just call people, and it's not always going to work.
So I'm pretty sure the first time you worked for me, and I'm pretty sure it was you who said we were doing a job for Telstra Live.
I don't remember what it is, but I remember mentioning
it was the one at the Grand Hyatt.
Kieran to you,
I remember it.
And I know a guy. He can work this afternoon. Great, ring him.
Yeah.
Because the shit had gone to the fan. And and bing bang, and then you're back in the next day, and then bang, and that's how it
That's
starts.
right.
isn't
That's
it?
how it all rolls. Yeah. And then as a freelancer, you kind of, once you get to a certain point of busyness, I sort of am trying to sort of carve out a slight pathway in terms of things I want to do and pursue. But I'm still very much in that phase of life where Kiara, my wife, has only just gone back to work. I'm still the main breadwinner.
Yeah.
I'm ultimately just filling the calendar with whatever I can get.
Yeah.
But as it rolls on, I would like to sort of start to focus a bit more on different avenues.
Well, because that's something that's always, because obviously I'm a bit older than you guys, and you sort of think about the end game. As a freelancer, you really are just you, and when you decide that's it, it stops.
Yeah.
So, and do you find that you age out? Does it get to a point where you're not contemporary, and also, what do you do? What happens next?
Yeah.
Not as a retirement plan, but as you're getting older, and maybe you're not the guy that the young people are hiring. AV companies in 10 years' time who probably don't even exist yet. Don't necessarily know you.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, I do think about that. I'd like to say in my early 30s. 33.
Yeah.
So I think I've still got a bit of time left.
Totally.
But I definitely do think about the future in that regard. I see some people who've gone into, say, like a production management role, or even anything that's off the tools. I see some people who are a bit older than me who have gone off the tools for a few years and then like almost can't get back on.
Yeah.
In terms of operating a show.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm like, well, I don't want that to happen, but maybe in the future I don't care. But at the moment, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm also, I'm definitely, I do spend a bit of time thinking about what the future holds. At the moment, I'm really happy just being a tech and rolling in and doing my job and from a freelance point of view, I don't think about work when I get home.
Yeah, especially with the young
amazing.
kids, you can be present at home.
Yeah.
You
Well,
don't have to take it home with you.
Huge benefit, isn't it, of when you don't. It's the bad side is you don't know what you're doing next week.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what the job involves. You might know the name, the job's called Company X.
Yeah.
The conference Y. But until you get there, it's when you find out. I
That's
guess.
right.
You know.
Yeah.
But well, so equally when you leave,
Gone.
it's gone. Whereas people who own businesses, people who are in operational roles, TDs, full timers, when they're thinking about next week, next month.
Yeah.
So when you get home, it's kind of
Yeah.
emails still going around in your head.
Because that's where, in terms of what's next, I don't know if I'm ready to do a role like that yet. Because I really like just being home with my family and not thinking about that. Not the people who have those jobs aren't home with their family. I know some people who are really, really good at just getting home and switching off. I'm probably naturally not one who is like that. I know that when I have had those jobs or when I pick up freelance production management jobs, I know it is just occupies my brain. That's just the way my brain works. It just has a problem and it just eats away at the problem.
Yep.
It doesn't care about time of day.
I'm very similar to that, and you could be it's always, especially when you do some work from home as well, there's not that physical separation. It's like, when do you switch off? You got to really put some boundaries in it sometimes about when you can actually check your email and maybe turn your notifications off, all these sort of things to really try
I like
and
listening
separate
to
it.
podcasts. They fill your brain, because I do a lot of walking and walk the dog, whatever, and listen to podcasts, but my own thoughts don't really come in my head because someone else is doing the talking.
Bit of quiet time.
It's odd like that. But
It
is hard to stop, and I think that's an interesting point about being a freelancer.
Yeah, but you're right. Look, at the end of the day, it is just me. I'm not necessarily building a business or anything at the end of it, which I'm pretty happy with. I think from a financial point of view, I'll eventually just invest in other places rather than in my own workplace.
Yeah, for sure.
That brings me to, I guess, my next thought was, there's been plenty of people that start like yourself and then go buy a little bit. I'm going to buy a little bit of. I mean, I've got a client, so you win a client. So you're not working for someone else. You've got a client now. Yeah. And then I could hire all that gear, or I could buy some radio mics, or a perfect cue, or some laptops.
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing between working full time and freelance, and you're saying you're on your own in a sense. It's like that goes for everything, including training, opportunities to get promotions within a business. That's kind of on you. If you need to learn something, you've got to go learn it. If you want to get these other opportunities, you've got to put yourself in a position where you can get them. And sometimes getting sort of production manager type roles and all this sort of thing are harder to get as a freelancer, because you kind of need someone who's in the business, and you can get contract work and that kind of thing, but there's ways to do it. But it is all you, but you have to make it happen. Yeah. Like you find, like if you want to move somewhere, but just on that thought, that's kind of what I would like about it as well, is like it is up to you. In a job, you've got this role that you're filling, and if you want to do something else, you've got to kind of convince everyone else. Yeah. Whereas as a freelance, you can say, look, I want to do that. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to try to make it happen.
But when you're full time, it's in the business's interest to train you.
Yeah, definitely.
Freelancer, it's not. If I'm engaging a freelancer to work with me, I kind of expect them to come fully formed, born. It's not my job to teach them stuff generally, because I'm paying a lot, probably more than what I'm paying my full time. And I'm expecting this level. I mean, in the worst case scenario, it's just some pack down crew, and they can't even roll a cable.
And we've been there.
It's like, well, I shouldn't be teaching you. It's ridiculous.
Especially at like 10:30 at night after I've been here for 12 hours. You just want someone that can get in and get it done, right?
So, yes, maybe your opportunity to learn things is reduced when you're a freelancer. Especially in the younger junior freelancers, that's a thing.
No, it definitely is. As you say, you have to take the learning on yourself. You have to go YouTube, do proper courses, whatever you want. And there's an element of backing your skill and accepting the jobs that feel a little bit out of your range.
Yeah, definitely.
As Alex Hasker said, one of his things he said to Tim Poolbrook once was, you just got to get on the bull and ride it. And that's sometimes people will offer you a job and it feels like, what? That feels like way out of my skill. But I think that most people are offering you the job because they know you can do it.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And even if because I'm a terrible self-critic. So people offer me work, and I'm like, I don't feel like I do. But, you've just got to back in your skill. And then it might be a bit of a reach, but you'll learn along the way.
Yeah.
And it's that confidence of not having to know everything ahead of time, no guarantees.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause I hear what you're saying, like there's been plenty of times where I picked up the phone in the past and said, oh, can you do this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no worries, yep, cool, 4 days, awesome, yep, look it in. How do I do, get on Google, like E2 what?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But that confidence
show
in
offline before you get there.
And thinking back to times where you have figured it out, when you've been in the thick of it and you're like, look, I figured it out.
Yeah.
I can do that again.
Yeah.
But then also putting in the work to make that happen.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily getting paid per hour for that work that you're putting in, but you're hoping it'll pay off in the long run.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an exceptional skill, though, or talent, hopefully, or attribute, because, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people that just lob up. But if you've got the care and the attention to detail to actually, check it out, read it, and care about that.
Yeah, that's true.
They're
Some people
admirable skills or attributes.
Yeah, and that's right. And when we say I don't think about work, I generally don't think about work. But if I'm working for a company who is diligent enough to send me through floor plan schematics,
you will
show brief, I'll read it all.
Yeah.
If it's an audio gig, I'll try and build a file before the show. If it's vision, I'll try and prep what I can. I'm always thinking, as I'm driving to the gig, I'm thinking about how I'm going to bump it in or do it, or how I'm going to set up the console or the E2 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Always, because I visualize everything.
Yeah.
I pre-build that show 14 times in my head, and down to picturing everything. Then that's how you go, need one of them, then take that, that's what that ladder's for, all that, da-da-da. Like, so you've there's plenty of people that don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when you walk into a job blind, that's probably would be the hard.
Yeah.
Because you've not seen anything.
And when people aren't putting in the same preparation that you yourself would put in, and it's hard to think, why haven't you really thought about this?
Yeah.
Because as a freelancer, you don't have control over what happens at the warehouse.
Yeah.
Or all of this preamble.
Yeah.
It's just, you do just rock up sometimes and you have to deal with what you're dealt.
And that's what you're saying, that you can sort of then pick and choose?
Yeah, try and pick and choose. And you can also, I always try and approach every job, because I'm charging the same no matter who I work for, really, mostly. I try and approach every job the same and give it all the same level of care and attitude. Mm-hmm. But also sometimes when you rock up and no one's planned anything, and they give you just a mess of gear to try and just figure it out. It's like, okay, well, I may not care as much that day.
Yeah.
And I do.
Or
someone who's put care into the...
Or I'm going to do what I can. But
yeah.
if it gets up, it gets up.
Yeah,
It's like, it's not my fault necessarily in that situation if it doesn't get up in time.
Care as much as they do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And how, because you mentioned charging basically the same, how do you find that works? I mean, you can't just Google, hey, how much does a freelancer charge?
It's really hard.
That's really hard.
I've
got a lot of close friends in the industry doing it for so long. John's one of them who, I'm happy to talk about rates with those kind of people. But generally rates are very taboo in our industry for some unknown reason. It would be much easier if we all just talked about it more.
Yeah. It is strange, isn't it? Like, I keep my cards close to my chest, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
Is it a competitive advantage or disadvantage?
I think it's a trust thing as well, potentially, just now that I'm thinking about it with the company. If you've negotiated a rate with them, they may not want you, if you're a good negotiator, they may not want you telling everyone else, hey, this is what I get, and then everyone wants that much.
As a former full-time employee in some of the big AV companies, yes, we didn't want people, full-timers and certainly not freelancers, to talk about.
And that makes sense in a lot of ways.
A lot. Whereas now, friends in the industry, especially, recently started working for a newer company, and one of the friends my friend who was already there, I was like, hey, I'm starting working for them. He's like, great, they should be paying you at least this. Okay, cool, good to know.
Yeah.
It's kind of good to have that relationship.
But you can just start, I guess, with your expectation, and then
I always start with my base rate.
And then they can just fall off their chair. And
that's right.
Then you know, right?
And if it's if they don't want to pay that, well, my calendar's full. I'm not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've been laughed at on the phone in the past where someone's needed someone to operate a gig. They've called me up. Oh, I've got your name from so and so. Blah blah. Cool. What's your rate? This is my rate. And they're like, oh, yeah, all right then. I'm like,
okay,
all right then. Bye. You don't have to. I don't care. But it's true. Yeah.
Totally.
Because it's not like a marketplace. Again, it's not like, I mean, it's, I sell gaffer tape and stuff, and I mean, you can just Google it, and you can
There's the price.
see that's what everyone's charging.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It's kind of pretty obvious.
yeah, and you can use your price as a tool. If you keep on working for a company who keeps on sending you out to terrible jobs, you have to fix when you get there. All right, my rate just keeps on going up for you.
Yes.
To
The headache tax.
That's right, the headache tax, to compensate the headache, and then also to maybe deter them. Well, I probably should just say no, but if I have to say yes, then it's worth it.
Yeah, it's like if I have to deal with that stress, because it's stress, isn't it?
Yeah, it is stress.
That's what it adds. So it's almost like stress has a cost.
Yeah, that's right. Because for the same, my normal rate, I can go and work for someone who I know has thought about the job, prepped it. They send gear which is well prepped, or I've gone and prepped it.
Yeah.
Or I can go and work for you who haven't put any effort into this job, and we're figuring it out on the day and fixing it on the day because the gear's broken.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, really, because essentially you're then charging like a project manager rate because you're essentially project managing it in real time.
Yeah, that's right.
So that should cost more, really,
Yeah.
if you look at it that way.
Whereas the cheaper thing for that company in the messy situation to do would be to book me for a day of prep.
Yeah. And cheaper.
Yeah,
cheaper.
and cheaper.
Yeah.
And the same for working away. I keep on upping my working away rate just because I don't really like leaving my family anymore.
Yeah.
I don't really care about going away for work. But now it's like, okay, I'm away for work and it's worth it. And you can have a few days off either side.
Yeah.
Can maybe go away,
But that extra rate is paying for those days off.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that goes into like another one of the pros of freelance, if that's the way you want to go, is that you have the ability to do that. Like if you feel like me doing this job, if I'm going to do it, I want to be getting this much, that's within your control.
Yeah, that's right.
You can dictate sort of terms in that way.
Yeah,
That's another benefit.
Yeah.
So are you casual with anyone?
Yeah, unfortunately. I would like to try and fix that. But yeah, there are probably about 3 or 4 companies I'm casual with because they, like a lot of people, they require you to be PTY, LTD, to be an invoicing contractor or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you're not PTY, LTD, they'll get you on casual books. But now that I've got about 3 or 4, I think, off the top of my head. It's kind of getting a little bit messy, and it's annoying. Like, okay, so you guys on timesheets or whatever system you have, and then I've got to send some invoices over here.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of getting to the point where I just PTY, LTD, whatever the cost is for that, it's kind of worth it just to make it all the same invoicing system.
Yeah. Is that their only requirement though, or do they just generally have a flat rule that?
That's
they only
generally
do
their only
casuals?
requirement.
Right.
Yeah, once you PTY, I think sometimes some of them will want, which I've already got, proof of public liability, and then also your own work cover.
Yeah. Because it has always been a grey area. I'm not a lawyer, neither of us are lawyers, and certainly don't work for the Fair Work Odds Budmans and or the ATO. But
take all this with a grain of salt.
yes, their opinions, but it has always been a bit grey. And I've worked for several businesses that have got to be casual, and then obviously my own businesses, it's certainly convenient to invoice, to get an invoice. Because as you say, dealing with the other end, timesheets. I need your timesheet. Oh, I'm really busy. I need a pay run is today.
Yeah. And that's something that you have to manage as a business owner. So it is more convenient for you to get just invoice for your time.
Yeah. And some of them are like still Excel sheets or whatever, and I'm like, right now I've got to do an Excel.
That's the worst thing. All the different systems. If each company has a different system,
that's right.
As a freelancer, you're like, so I need 7 different apps.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I don't want to do that.
That's right.
And you sort of, again, you're working on the company's timetable. I need this done by this time, as opposed to a freelancer. It's like, well, I control my own.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of like 3 main ways that people deal with it. Yeah, so I'm either fully casual and on their books, and I do timesheets, or one of them has an app where I just tap on at the start of the shift and tap on at the end of the shift, which that's the best one. As far as that world goes. So then there's like just my normal invoicing, sole trader, usual business, and then some people have read that grey area as I invoice them, but they still pay me super on top of my invoice.
Okay, Because is that because you're regular with them?
No,
not necessarily.
They just want to cover it themselves.
Rules kind of did change, and it's a bit. Better keep it.
Yeah.
But in theory, everybody should be paid super, whether you're casual or contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I pay my own super,
Yeah.
obviously, from maybe not obviously, but out of what I invoice. But then, so these people, there's two people I work for who pay super on top, which is great. And then they're also just covering themselves that if they ever get audited and someone says, hey, you actually were meant to pay all those people super,
They've already done it.
they've already done it.
Do they? Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, do they often want to factor that into what you charge in?
No.
They just
They're happy on top.
And GST, are you GST registered? Yeah. Okay. Because that's the other one that's come up.
Well, yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that a lot of people just starting out freelancing, they may look at that and think, oh, I'm already dealing with all these things. There's a threshold for GST. I don't have to have it.
No.
So maybe I won't bother. But my advice would be to do it.
I can't imagine anyone not hitting the threshold now unless you were really green.
Yeah.
The threshold's pretty low.
It is.
It's like 80 something, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I
Yeah,
think like 80 or something. So if but again, if you work from living with mum and dad, you're it's not your full. I mean, it's your full-time income, but it's not your full-time job. I mean, you might still be playing your band or DJing or whatever. So, you're earning 30, 45, 50 grand. You don't need to. And it's an extra cost for you because you've got to do your activity statements. And if you're not registered, it's less work.
Yeah.
Less work, but the flip side of that is often people, just say you are in a band or, you're doing a lot of this outside of work. A lot of the time, you often need things for work, whether that's a laptop or whether that's...
But if you're not registered, then
some music. Exactly. So it's basically like an automatic 10% off everything that you need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is something to really consider. And also, if you get into it when you start and maybe you're not so busy, then down the track, you kind of know what that's all about. Because if you try and figure that all out while you're flat chat, that can sometimes be like this extra bit of stress. I now have to figure out GST.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So that puts an extra complication, doesn't it, when, say, a third of your income is casual and it's PY.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because that starts to water down me meeting that threat. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all getting a bit messy at the moment.
Yeah.
I need to deal with that one. And then, but with GST and stuff, so I use Xero, which I don't know about you, but I know some people who use various different accounting apps. Some people are still just spreadsheets. I know of amazing whiz-bang spreadsheets made up.
Yeah.
But Xero just handles it all for me.
Some of them are
not sponsored by Xero.
Amateur spreadsheets though. Some people, I've dealt with invoices all my life. It's the same invoice, never cut and paste. Sometimes they just say GST, but are they actually registered? Do they?
Yeah.
And you have to Google them. They don't even have an ABN, mate. Like you can't charge me 10% when you're just pocketing it.
Exactly.
So it's all that's it's all that stuff. So as a freelancer, how we've covered basically how you obviously do Xero, you get your diary, and you don't really need to advertise. So as anyone you're sort of thinking, should I become a freelancer? What are the pros and what are the cons? Like why would some young kid who's only just started out not go straight to freelance?
Yeah, I reckon if you're a young kid, I probably wouldn't do what I did. I would go full time with someone who has a great in-house training program and who really are good at nurturing that young talent and bringing you through. And it was a pretty rough ride, and it has been kind of along my career, just like figuring things out, learning on the fly. That can be, that's not suited to everyone.
No.
And it probably took me longer to get to where I am because the training was slower.
Yes.
I
would wholeheartedly agree.
But if you go full time with, there's many companies out there who have dedicated traineeships and ways of bringing young people through, or not even young, you might want to start when you're 50. Recommend it based on the physicality, but
definitely, especially when you're starting.
So that would be for the young people starting out in the industry. I would probably recommend full time somewhere where you can grow.
It's a good way to build your network as well.
Yeah,
if you go on a lot of different gigs, you might cross paths with different companies along the way, and people recognise you and all that kind of thing. And that all helps out when you eventually want to go freelance.
But then if I had to say the quick pros and cons off the top of my head, I would say, the pro of full time is you can be taught things well. Hopefully, depending on where you go, you might go somewhere that
it's as much about learning good and bad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You can build up a network if you're full time. You obviously get that regular income, sick days, paid leave, all those great full-time benefits.
Yep. Looks good to the bank.
Looks good to the bank. You get a regular, just sense of somewhere to go every day. That's always quite nice. Well, depending on your personality type.
Yeah, that's something to think about in those quiet times where you're not really getting a lot of calls.
Yeah.
You can kind of sometimes get in a bit of a sort of a slump, a weird headspace.
Yeah.
Where you're not on holidays, but you're not working.
Exactly.
Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
No, motivation is a
Totally. Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first started in AV, I worked for a year and I quit. I was going to be a freelancer, and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I kind of went into this weird kind of slump.
Yeah.
And, we only had VCRs back then,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was literally just watching, hiring movies and just watching stuff. And, I looked terrible. I hadn't shaved for like months. So it was anyway.
Yeah. No, but it happens very easily and can happen quickly as well.
Yeah.
Your mindset can shift because there's not that. It's not just stability in income and stability in all that. It's stability in routine.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Routine is good.
Drive and motivation. I mean, maybe when you're older, you've got that financial commitment. You've got, other people, dependents. But when you're a young guy, kind of need to have someone else telling you. Be here at 6 a.m.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then the cons to full time, well, the big one from my perspective would be, that you are locked in somewhere. So all your time is basically theirs, 40 hours a week or whatever you've agreed to, plus overtime.
Yeah.
So they will dictate typically that.
Yeah.
So if your job comes up, well, then you're the guy tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. even though you had other things planned. Typically, depending on who you work for, you're going to be stuck in the one field of the events industry.
Yep.
Some companies cover a large array, and you will get exposed to a lot more, which is probably something to think about entering the industry if you're looking to go full time somewhere. And then what else? What's a con?
I guess it's all that we were talking before about tax, GST, all of this kind of stuff. Cons of freelance.
No, full time.
Oh, full time. Yes.
Yeah, mostly for me, it would just be the time and the diversity of work, and also if you started out with a smaller company and they had a great traineeship or whatever, but you might end up hitting the peak of their gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might not own the gear that you want to learn.
Yes.
And then you're kind of stuck there. You're not stuck there, but you have the choice
leave.
to make. Okay, well, I want to actually go and do that. You have to go somewhere
Yeah.
else.
But is there, I think I know the answer to this because there always seemed to be an envy for casuals or freelancers because they used to seem to come in and get the...
True,
the rockstar treatment.
That's true. Especially when you're a junior, like you're trying to learn, you're trying to figure out all this cool gear, and every time you get the cool gear, some freelancer comes in and operates it anyway.
Yeah.
And you're just left looking over their shoulder asking the questions.
Yeah.
But I guess that could be good as well if you're that kid who wants to learn. If the job's going well, bug that freelancer.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
usually,
as long as as long as
the gig's going well.
Yeah.
Techs love talking about gear. And they'll happily talk your head off and tell you everything there needs to know. So use that to your advantage. I'd reckon.
Totally.
Yeah. But it did used to always be something that used to come up. How come he's... Why aren't I?
Yeah.
You're not ready yet,
That's right. And then with freelancing, I think the pros and cons would be the pros are you win back that control of your time to an extent. Like you have to make hay while the sun shines. So when it's a busy month, I'll be working a lot, knowing, it's like next February, March are very busy for me, but knowing that April is often quiet around Easter. So you kind of got control over your hours and that kind of thing, but you are also kind of governed a bit by the busy periods. But then also last year, August was really busy, but my family and I went off on holiday. So you ultimately have control.
And that's a good thing. The big pro of if you want to plan a holiday, you can actually plan it, and it doesn't need to be approved by 3 or 4 different people. You can just say, I'm going on holiday, and it's up to you.
And depending on who you're working for, I've heard of people's holidays being pulled out from under them because some massive jobs come on.
That's what I mean.
Well,
it's
you
really
can't
hard.
go. And as well with freelancing, you get the ability to kind of shape your career in terms of what you want to do, where you want to go, what kind of gear or gigs you want to do. That's kind of cool.
I guess the downside is you're probably never going to be in management.
No, exactly.
'Cause you're
So
managing-
full-time has that career pathway,
Yes.
Yeah,
pro,
yeah.
whereas freelancing, you kind of
Because
just...
you're not, you might be the best freelancer and the most desired and the highest rate,
Yeah.
but you've never had to manage a team, even other than the crew on the day. You've not managed politics of the office.
That's right.
HR,
Yeah,
payroll,
yeah.
that kind of gear. So you're not. Someone says, "I want you to become the manager here." You go, "Oh, I've never done that."
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've felt that when I've gone as a freelancer, like I've gone to different companies to do freelancing TD or production management roles, and I jump back into that office environment for a few weeks, and I'm like, I'm not used to this.
No.
Yeah.
Like I ask for something, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's that person," and you have to go through this complex chain to get something done.
Yeah.
Which I could just do. It's
Yeah,
like,
no, doesn't work.
what do you mean I have to talk
Yeah,
to
yeah,
5
yeah.
people to press that button?
Yeah.
You kidding?
And that's the thing, like as a freelancer or if you're doing your own business, you can just get things done. And sometimes going
Yeah.
into a bigger group where there's these procedures and like
Yeah,
it
that's
seems
right.
almost like a bunch of red tape, it's just can be really frustrating. It's
Yeah.
like, I just want to do what I want to do,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
get it done.
Yeah.
But then those big companies, if it is a big company we're talking, they have the safety net. They have all the red tape, but they also have the safety net of often being bigger. They're gonna pay you every week.
Yeah,
They're gonna have
yeah.
a good scope of work. They're gonna have career.
Often
Yeah.
two different types of people, I suppose, and you've probably or hopefully already worked out whether you're that kind of big AV or big convention centre or
Yeah.
big group, and you love that big team and you
Yeah.
kind of thrive in that kind of work,
Yeah,
or
that's
you
right.
don't.
Yeah.
I'd hope.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
You've talked about holidays though. You've worked in the UK. You've
Yes.
done working holidays essentially, or you've taken the family and gone to the UK and worked.
Yeah, well, yeah. So my wife and I, pre-kids, we went in 2016 and lived in the UK for a year,
Yeah.
which was really cool. So there, we worked. I did AV. My wife did teaching. Worked and travelled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was that? How was working? Were you full time there?
No, I was freelancing there as well.
And what's the difference?
The main differences, just to pick a few. So in the UK, largely freelancing is day rate.
Right.
Okay.
So obviously here the freelancing world is, unless you're interstate, is hourly. So yeah, over there it's all day rate. So the pace of work can be a bit slower.
Yep.
It's just kind of the usual nature of some day rate stuff, because you go to do a job that would, we might smash out in 6 hours and then get paid less for because we smashed it out too fast. But then they kind of know that they've got the whole day, but then they sometimes do work fast, so then they can go home early. And
Yeah, yeah.
Culturally, though, is it a heavy freelance market, or in a sense, there's still a lot of full times and you're the odd guy on that crew?
it
Or-
was sort of similar to here.
Okay.
I didn't venture too far into. I kind of only ended up freelancing for the one company.
Yep.
And because I lived up in the north, it's a bit different to living in London. So I know that the game's a bit different down there.
Yeah.
But there's randomly my uncle who lived in York, literally on the same road that he lived on, there was an AV company. I was caught the bus into town one day. It was one of the first days we lived there, and saw in this AV company warehouse. I was like, oh. So I went and popped my invoice on my resume in, made
Yeah.
one, popped it in. And then I started freelancing for them like the next day pretty much.
So you didn't have any of this pre-done before you left?
No.
You thought, I'll go there and I'll just figure it out?
And I figured it out.
That's awesome.
And then the good thing about that company, which was back then called Savile, they had branches all around the UK and all around the north. So I worked for the York branch, Leeds branch, Manchester, Hull, and like Newcastle. And they're all kind of just like within an hour or two's drive from
Yeah.
where I lived.
Yeah.
So it kind of meant I didn't really need to branch out to too many different companies. I just kind of had the one.
So it's like working for Encore or...
Yeah, that's
or
right.
sort of-
Yeah, and they had their own venues like Encore here, and they also did a bunch of gigs outside of that as well.
Cool. And so still just invoicing, but it's...
Invoicing, yeah, sole trader equivalent. I think it's still called sole trader. Yeah, and then all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that really confusing tax-wise? Like, were you thinking, where do I pay tax? Or
It was really crap.
Oh, really?
Because I can't remember if it's the rule, but it's if you live and work in Australia for more than 6 months of the tax year, even if you go overseas, you have to pay tax on that income here.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the bank over there, when you create an account in England, they ask you for your TFN, your tax file number. So then they do report that back.
Yeah.
So you've got
to Australia.
You've got to report it.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, for that first 6 months, I don't think I was paying double tax because I was under the UK tax threshold.
Right.
Luckily.
Yep.
But I was paying tax in Australia for my first 6 months of income in the UK because we moved in Jan. So for that financial year.
But just, for the benefit of people listening, you're not then paying tax in UK as
Only
well.
because I was under the threshold, yeah.
Oh,
if I had have earned enough, I think I would have maybe paid double tax.
I always thought you only have to pay tax in one country.
Surely.
So if you could prove to UK, I'm paying tax in Australia,
Yeah,
it leaves
that's
me
true.
alone. But you could find yourself in that position where both of them want tax off you.
You might,
because
yeah.
of their policies, right?
Yeah.
And they have different
Yeah.
financial years.
Exactly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
there you go.
luckily I didn't have to figure that out.
And culturally, they act.
Yeah, it's all pretty much the same. Yeah, the pace of work was a little slower compared to what I'm used to, and just different. Like everything's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like it's all in terms of AV and corporate, like where you do a lot of. It's all flats, all set pieces.
Yes.
Instead of draping, so you don't build big drape walls at the back of the stage. You just bring in some flat set pieces, and where the AV crew would build those. I know for some of the guys who worked, like Tim and a few others I know who worked in London, they would have whole other teams who would do that.
Yeah.
The chippy kind of work. But the company I worked for, we just did that.
Yeah.
You put your projection screen in the surface into that frame, and it would be this nice polished thing.
Yeah. It's always been that way. I just had a few UK people work for me, or work with me here.
Yeah.
They still always go, I can't believe you people do all these drapes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's funny. I wonder if anyone will sort of pick up and maybe try to do something similar here.
I think it's a bit ingrained.
Yeah.
Yeah. But did you like the look? Like,
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. And they're all, and a little bit, I don't know, I think a fairly common thread, I've talked to a few people who have freelanced over there. Like we would start the morning in the warehouse, drink like 3 cups of tea, standing around the kettle. And then like eventually the boss would come out and be like, go, get out. It was just like chill for like the first hour usually. Unless there was there's a conference starting at 9, unless there was like a huge rush out the door.
and that could be nice, can't it?
Yeah,
Just a bit of a slower start
to the day.
Yeah.
Everyone has a cup of tea and then we all head out. And the other thing about they're all, so many people I met in the UK were like, oh, Australia, you guys have got those piggyback plugs, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And like I have to show them like a photo on my phone. They were fascinated because all like the UK plugs have a fuse in them.
Yes.
So they can't be piggyback.
Yep.
So like everything is a power board.
Right.
And they're just like blown away by this.
Oh, so you can just do that.
Yeah.
That's great.
But everything else is pretty much the same.
Everything else is pretty much the same. Yeah, all the same gear. All the same. Yeah.
Very good. And so yes, we touched on, I guess, on the future, but yeah, your plans to keep freelancing for as long as you can.
I think so.
More TV.
Yeah, I
that
think
sort
so.
of stuff?
Yeah, TV and film. We've got some possible other filmy stuff on the horizon.
As in, feature filmy sort of thing.
Potentially, yeah. There's that. I don't know if it's going to happen or not yet, but yeah, there's the big studio in the Docklands.
Yes.
Now,
Oh, yeah.
big
Yes,
volume wall.
yep,
So
I sold them all their gaffer tape.
there you go.
There you go.
So Carl, who runs that, and just went in there the other week and had to talk to him. So that'd be cool to go in there.
Yeah.
That's a bit more like, regular hours too.
Yeah,
he
yeah.
said once they start filming, which is kind of nice, just to
A lot of
drive in
commercials
there.
and-
Yeah, they do a lot of. At the moment, they're doing a lot of commercials in the smaller studio.
And was that something that you pursued sort of out of nowhere, or was that like an opportunity that just sort of
No, that
came
was-
along?
Yeah, it just came along. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I bumped into Carl. So this is all about freelancing.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
relationships.
wanting to know. Yeah.
So Carl and I, so Carl was ex-TDC. We built a volume wall at Docklands last year for a Netflix show.
Right.
So people listening who don't know what that is, that's the big virtual production LED screen. Put the backdrop or the scene on the wall and on the LED wall and shoot in there rather than outside in the rain. So we built one last year, and then I bumped into Carl in December. I was driving into work into MCC. He was going in for another gig. Just like bumped into him at the start of the car park. Oh, hey, man. And he was like, oh, I should come down. And then, so maybe this year, if I've got availability.
Yeah, nice.
It's amazing how it works, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
that's right.
What we're talking about when we just started the podcast.
Yeah.
Your network is just
Your network's
everything.
great. Yeah.
And you never know who you're going to bump into.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why you got to get out there, I guess. And
Yeah.
try and meet a whole bunch of people and try to make friends along the way.
Yeah.
Because, you can send as many emails and resumes out as you like.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just
Yeah.
Got to get, unless you happen to land, there's a chance, but a chance to get the right guy on the right day is going to go, awesome, I just was about to look
Yeah,
for someone.
exactly. Yeah.
Mostly, it doesn't work that way.
No, exactly. Yeah. Which is what happened in the UK, dropped in, gave them my resume, and
But they were obviously looking.
Dave, who was ended up being my boss, was like, "Oh, great, this looks good. Yeah, well, we need some tomorrow."
Yeah.
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 Sometimes it's just
Okay.
timing sometimes, isn't it?
It is.
Sometimes you just
Yeah,
get
that's
lucky.
right.
So,
Yeah.
You used to, when I was a crew controller at staging, guys would come back from their shift and they'd literally be, oh, can you work tomorrow? And then can you do next week? Like, because they're there, they kind of get the shift.
yeah,
Yeah.
being front of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As
Yeah,
opposed to
that's
there might be someone else maybe.
Yeah.
But it's, they
Exactly.
kind of go, yeah, I
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, and you always feel that as a freelancer, like as you start to say no to people, as we talked about before, you start to drop off the radar.
Yeah, yeah.
It's when they're seeing you on the gigs or seeing you in the office and around
Yeah.
the warehouse, that's when they start to book you more.
Yes.
So there is definitely a truth to the more you say no to someone, the less that they'll
Yeah.
Yeah.
think to call you.
But another thing is, and this goes in business as well, just giving people a call that
Yeah.
you may have sort of made friends with as you've worked with them a lot in the past, but it's been quiet for a bit. Just you can give people a call and just say,
Yeah.
"G'day, how's it going?" Without necessarily like an intent.
Yeah.
Just keep in contact with
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
send them a message, say "G'day."
Yeah. And then as you build those relationships, that's how, as we talked about a lot, that's how it works. Heading into summer this year, I didn't really have a lot of work booked in, but I just messaged a few friends and asked what was happening around town, and
Yeah.
Oh,
got
yeah.
a couple of weeks at the tennis. Like,
Well, there you go. Like not necessarily needing to be the actual business or the people hiring, just
Yep.
to the freelancers in your
Yeah,
network as
yeah.
well. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
exactly.
point.
From the other side, as a business owner, I mean, we don't know what we were going to be doing the next year either. There's kind of, I mean, you've got clients and you've got things but for the most part, you start the year, your rental system essentially is empty.
yeah.
And then you're going, geez, I hope that fills up.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I've got
Yeah,
all
yeah.
this big gear and all this building. But, and that was obviously one of the advantages of hiring freelancers as a AV company owner, is because if I had full-time staff, I mean, it's another thing. I've got to pay the rent. I've got this lease on these projectors or whatever.
Yeah,
it's been.
yeah.
Now I've got like 2 full-time staff. But yeah, you have to have faith, and that work's going to come, just in the same way that you
Yeah.
kind of go into the summer going,
Yeah, definitely.
so I mean, it's the same. You ring around, you just sit back, and you hopefully, if your reputation's good and there's work's going to be there, short of some sort of COVID thing, it's just going to come.
I think there's a bit of personality differences that can play into that as well. Like we were talking about the pros and cons, freelance versus full time. Sometimes just your personality and how you like to work comes into it, because there's a lot of people that I know that just they like a routine, they like that security, so they can plan for the future. They've got reasons why they want to just have work be work, and then they can do what they want to do. Other people get restless in that. Like I find myself in that situation. I get restless in that environment, and I like a bit of chaos. To an extent. In my life.
And, and the people that like that in the security of a full-time job also, I find, typically like the security of going to a job knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that had planned it, or someone else in the office planned it, and they know, like, so then those kind of people, when they go to a freelance world, they're worrying about if the work's going to come, and then when the work does come, they're worrying about what the work actually is.
So sometimes you just, whether it's a pro or a con, it's just like, what do you want to do? And that's the direction you're going to go.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think everyone just has to find out. And you do over time, you find out who you are more and more every year, and how that works with your work. And that's an ever-changing thing. I think at certain points in my life, full-time's made sense, and at certain points, freelancing's made sense. At the moment, freelancing makes a lot of sense for me, but I definitely don't think I'd be freelancing forever. At some point, the right full-time job or the right opportunity would come along.
And that's it. You can change, can't you? You don't have to choose one and that's it. That's me for life. That's what I'm doing.
That's right.
No, you're not brand.
No.
Excellent. Well, on that existential bombshell, I think we should say adios for today. And thanks, Kieran.
No worries.
Thanks for talking freelancing. And this has been Gafferpedia, and we'll be back soon with another episode.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Gafferpedia is brought to you by TechBox, Hippo Event Technology, AV Hire, and Cardigan Creative. Catch you on the next episode.